Hello, and welcome to Conversations with Reverend G. I am your host, Reverend Grenetta Mason, aka Reverend G. And I'm here every Monday night on WEMS Radio Live, bringing you spiritual conversations. And my guests, they come from all perspectives, they come from all walks of life. We have all different perspectives. And we talk about spirituality, we talk about life, we talk about love. We talk about spirituality from a practical point of view. How does it support you in your everyday life? As we go through our daily lives and we encounter a lot of different things, how can our spiritual practices support us? I talk about a spiritual toolkit, and that spiritual toolkit are all the practices that are special for you. Our toolkits are very personal because we get to choose what practices work for us. We talk about spirituality from a point of view of what does it mean in our lives? How has our spiritual journey supported us? You can find me also every day with some spiritual affirmations and inspiration on Facebook as Reverend Grenetta Mason, on Instagram as Rev Grenetta, and also on YouTube as Reverend Grenetta Mason. I'm excited about this show tonight because I have a very special guest. My guest tonight is Loris Bell. Loris is a writer, she's a poet, she's also an author and a creative. And I'm excited to have her here to talk about her spiritual journey, to talk about the different projects she's worked on, and how she is inspiring women every single day. Welcome, Loris. Hello, hello.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me here.
I'm excited to have you here on
Me
Conversations with
too.
Reverend G. Loris and I, we do have a history, right?
Yes, we
Where
do.
we used to meet on Mondays and do motivational Mondays. So we've spent some time together in the spiritual realm, and working
Yes.
with her creativity and spirituality. And she brought a lot of creativity to our Monday motivational meeting. So I'm excited to have her here. So why don't you introduce yourself, Lourdes? Because I always give like my little title thing, but then I want people get if you talk about who you are, people can get to know who you are, right? Because it's not also
Yeah,
always about the titles, right?
yeah. Hi, my name is Loris Bell, or you can call me Lo Bell for short. I am a writer, a poet, an author. I am also a creative. I am I love to travel. I'm a traveler, photographer,
Okay.
um, and I'm an educator as
Oh,
well,
okay.
among
Good.
all the things.
All the things. Of all the things, the thing in that, as I looked up more about you, the thing that I didn't know a lot about was you as an educator. So, talk to us about where you are now and how you got into education.
So that's really interesting because in college I didn't study to become an educator.
Okay.
I actually studied languages, and that's my other love besides being
Okay.
a creative. I started languages, and I also started like human ecology. Um, I became a educator working with college students when I was in college. Actually,
College.
I was. I'm pretty sure if you went away for college, there was something like an RA, like a resident advisor, that would like
Mm-hmm.
basically you had to oversee a floor. The difference uh, with what I had signed up for, it was for academics. So there was in my college, it was different. It was that there was an academic RA, and then there was like an RA.
Okay.
So I did that in college. I also worked in the advisement office in college, and that's how I was. I kind of like went into like educator, and I also did like tutoring for kids too. So
Hmm.
that's it's really like my background in education.
Hmm. And are you currently in education right now? Are you doing that's your
Uh,
job or?
yeah, I'm currently an advisor. Yes,
Okay, a
yeah,
college advisor.
college advisor. Yeah,
Okay.
with
Did you?
college students.
Has there been a huge impact in that for you over the past couple of years?
Absolutely. I've been doing it for, oh my gosh, it's gonna be almost 11, 12
12
years.
years. Wow. Hmm.
So it definitely has. It has been, I'm sorry, give me one moment.
Hmm.
It definitely has been like a big part of my life.
Hmm.
Um, like my roles have changed a little bit throughout the years, but advising students and just seeing them like just achieve that academic goal, like just okay, I finished my bachelor's. I think that's really rewarding at the end of the day.
Hmm.
Um, so and I don't have like 17, 18-year olds. I have like transfer students, so they come in, maybe with like a different college experience altogether.
More adults, because I work in adult
Yeah,
education
yeah,
too, which is quite different. I've
yeah.
always been in adult education, so that's very
Hmm.
different from working with, like, say, K through 12 and the different
Yeah,
things, right? Older.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's different. I thought that I wanted to do K through 12, and like I did most of my tutoring with the little ones, like I like to
Mhm,
call them.
mhm,
But I ended up staying with like the adult population.
mhm. I know that you're a writer, and you published a book, right?
Yes, it's actually coming out at the end of the month. There were
Okay.
some
Talk
delays, but
about
it's coming up.
yeah, tell us about your book and talk to us about you as a writer. What inspires you? And then tell us about this book that you've written.
What inspires me? Almost everything. No, I'm so serious.
Mhm,
No, but like, to be more specific, what inspires me, it could be sometimes it could just be that I'm watching television
mhm,
and it reminded me of something that happened to me. It could be that I want to write about something to give myself a pep talk and it ends up
mhm,
being like a poem.
mhm,
Um, Sometimes I could just be sitting and be, inspired by just sitting in a particular excuse me, in a particular setting, and that inspires me, or something that, for example, like if I haven't like I I was raised in New York, so like if I'm in a different state and
mhm,
seeing palm trees all of a sudden is
mhm,
it's kind of a whole different experience. All of that inspires me.
mhm,
In terms of my book,
mhm,
uh, to be completely honest, I was and transparent. I was not planning on writing a book about what I wrote about.
Well, right.
It just kind of like it just kind of just came together. I remember in 2019, pre-pandemic, I completed a leadership workshop, and during that leadership workshop, I rediscovered my love for writing because I had not
Mm,
like I had journaled. Like journaling is one thing for me. I don't have like a hierarchy from writing and creative writing and writing in general.
mhm,
Um, I would journal, yes, but I
mhm.
didn't. Um, I was not like utilizing like my time to like create poems.
Okay.
So that in 2019 kind of I it it came back to me, I guess.
Mm-hmm,
Um, and at the time, I was also going through a lot of different experiences. Um, I had uh, released like a long term friendship at the
mm-hmm,
time. I
mm-hmm,
also like a lot of changes were going on
mm-hmm.
within me and then outside of me. And so it kind of, I ended up with a whole bunch of poems.
No. Oh, okay.
And then I decided, you know what, let me just put it in a book. Um, the writing took about a year and like 4 months or
Mm-hmm,
so.
mm-hmm,
The longest part was like the editing and stuff like that. But
mm-hmm.
um, that's 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 how the book came about.
Yeah. Is
Um,
there I was as you're talking, I'm thinking of things, right? Is there a theme for the book? And what's the name of it, and give us a background, because as I was thinking about it, what came to mind is, what are your expectations from the book? um, you
mm,
said you were going through things, but what are your expectations from writing this book? And that could be many things.
yes, it can be. So
I was thinking for many, but you can expect.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah. But I meant the impact of it, I guess, more
the
when I
impact.
say your expectations. Right.
Yes.
'Cause there's
Um,
money, there's the
well,
number one seller list. That's what I'm saying, many things. But I think
yes, it can be a lot of things.
the impact.
So the name of my book is called Mosaics de Moi. It's a multilingual collection, poetry collection, memoir. So the book is poetry based, and it tells a story. So each section will tell us is going to tell a story based on my life experience.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it does include some of the things that I was going through in like 2019.
Mhm.
It's not for little kids.
That's not for little kids. It's for big adults, right? Now, why would we have to preference it with that? What is it? It's like
Be-
sexually explicit, or
it's
the
not
words?
sexually no, it's
What
not
is,
sexually explicit, but
what
there
is
are
it?
some there is language there that is not for kids.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, great. That's why I was like, it's not for kids, right? And many things came from my mind. Not for kids, not for kids, not.
No, no,
So,
no,
which
no,
one
no,
was like,
no,
okay, let's be clear. Okay, great.
some
The
of the language
language
is
of it, you're
not.
right.
No,
Okay,
no, no.
right.
Some
And,
of the language is not for kids at
and
all.
so
At
you
all.
wrote these poems from, I guess you do it when you're in different emotional states in different
Yeah.
parts of your life, right?
Yeah.
And how was it for you to be able to share those parts of your life and put them out in a book?
That's a great question. Um, and to answer that, I felt extremely naked because
Mm,
I'm not that I don't share, but I don't share too much.
mhm, mhm,
So a lot of things that are in the book are things that may have been years ago, but I
mhm,
was only able to talk about it now
mhm, mhm, mhm,
because I
mhm.
was able to talk about it in a space of n- not of
Beat
what's
them.
the like not of
Judgment of
like well some of them well there's one that's a little angry but
the,
but
the
not like more of like growth, more of like in kind of like in retrospect of like what it taught me. And
okay, okay.
to go back to your question,
Mhm,
my expectation of the book or the poetry that I am sharing with everyone
mhm,
is that it helps them through something that they may be going through. Not everything
mhm.
was like rainbows and butterflies and
Right,
all that nice
right.
stuff, but that's really like my expectation that you know someone picks up my book and reads a poem and says, "Oh my goodness, like I went to something similar," or I wasn't the only person that went through that.
Yeah, and that's always good for people to find somebody to identify with, right? And as
Yeah.
we talk about mental health is really important, and as we talk about that, I can see how stories that people can relate to can support them in moving past whatever they're going through or even seeking help. One of the things, whenever I get a chance to talk about mental health for Black and Brown people, I'm always about seeking help, right? How can we really make it okay? How do we really get the word out there that it's really okay,
Mm-hmm.
to seek the help? And I like the idea of, stories that are written to support people, right?
Mm-hmm.
In what's going on with them. Um,
And
but
also, not to cut you off, but
no, no,
also
good.
like the um some of the things that is it that I've written also is about like the stuff that nobody likes to talk about, or was
Mm,
too taboo to even say those things out loud, or oh
mm,
no, like that's you can't really talk about that in front of people. um
mhm.
so like creating the space first, for people to feel comfortable talking about things and not just keep it inside, which I'm familiar with that.
But yeah,
No
because
stranger to that.
yeah, no stranger to not having the space to be able to talk about it, right? And that's the whole idea too about uh being able to be mentally sane is having a space where you can express, where you can go and find someone that'll listen and that will hear what you're saying. And as we go through it, as you're saying, as you look at your memoirs, you see how you've grown. One thing I just came back to me, what I was going to say is like we always, when we rethink things and we write them, we put emotion. Sometimes we go back to that original emotion that that we had around that whole thing, So as you were talking about the writing, that came to mind when you say you wrote it from a perspective of not being angry, right?
Well,
And
some
from
of it, some
it's
of it,
not the whole of it, right?
but not all of it. Some of it is more like, dang, like, wow. But all of it's a learning experience. Some of that was like, yeah, anger, but it's because I was in the emotion writing it. Or
Mm,
happiness because I was in the emotion of it, or like nostalgia because that was the emotion of that.
mhm, mhm. That's good. So, where could we? Well, we'll get a chance for you to tell us where we can find this book, right? And also, you know what? I know you said you're into languages. I noticed on all your posts you put them in how many different languages. Talk about what your journey to you started out with what language and how have you gotten to? You're still studying French and
Yes, to everything.
like I said, tell us about these languages, right?
so, so uh, I pretty much learned Spanish first. My parents are um, half Dominican. So I was raised speaking Spanish at home.
Okay. Mhm.
And when I went to school, granted, we learned English as simultaneously. But
Mhm.
as we got older, um, my mother was very strict in that we were to only speak Spanish at home.
Oh.
Unless it was about homework, then we can
Mm.
speak in English.
Wow. Mhm.
Yeah. And then I went ahead in high school.
Mhm.
God, I sound so old, so wise.
No.
And then in high school, I there was the opportunity of to take French classes, and I jumped on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so French quickly became my other like love.
Mm-hmm.
Spanish, of course, I spoke at home regularly. I didn't necessarily have many people to practice French with,
Mm-hmm.
but my uncle who resides in Canada and speaks French. But I didn't have that. But French quickly became something that I was extremely like invested in. And in college, I took French as well, and I'm still taking French classes now.
Mm-hmm. That's
That's
really
how
cool.
that
That's
that's
how
how that happened.
right, because I know when I see your posts, they're in English, Spanish, and French. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, always appealing to everybody. You said that you like travel. What places have you traveled? You say traveling inspires you. Can you talk about some of your travels?
Oh man, if I could travel more often, I would. I encourage it to anyone that can. I I've been to the Caribbean,
Mhm.
so I've been to DR, um, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Jamaica, Barbados. Um, let me see one. Been to Cuba. I've also been to Europe.
Mhm.
I've been to a lot of the states. I've been to
Mhm.
California, Utah, Arizona.
You've been wow, most of the states, right?
I've been to Florida,
Mhm.
obviously, Boston, Maine, Rhode Island, Canada, yeah, in particular like Montreal area, Quebec.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I have a long list of where I would like to visit next.
But places you like to visit, right? As a photographer, what lens? So you have this lens, and then you have the photography lens. Can you talk about the difference when you're operating as a photographer?
Oh, photography for me is so different.
Hmm.
It's a different creative side.
Hmm.
Um, and if I can, I'll share a story about how I got into photography.
Yeah, go for it.
So photography, and I still have my first camera that I was gifted.
Mm-hmm.
It was a 35 milliliter with like the film.
Hmm.
I first got into pictures because it was like the way that I was able to like do something creative at the time. I was, I think, I don't know, like 11 or 12. And
Okay.
so when I first picked up a camera, it was film. So back then there was no like automatic anything.
Right, right.
Then I got the fancy version of film.
Hmm.
So I got that as a gift, and that's the one that I still have. Of
Hmm.
course, then the digital cameras came on board, and that's how I was able to kind of um, record like digitally record at that point, right? Just like family time, friend time, holidays, and all that. But
Hmm.
when I look through a camera,
Hmm.
is and it's very different when I photograph people and when I photograph nature. It's a
Hmm.
completely different experience. When I photograph people, it's I try I, I try to capture the moment, but also I try to capture something that they would remember this particular picture. If that makes sense.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
when I take pictures of like landscape, particularly flowers, I love to take pictures of flowers.
Hmm.
And sunsets. Sunsets are like my favorite. It's different. I actually thank the flower for letting me take the picture.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, I say thank you for allowing me to photograph you, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's more of in a macro level, so it's it's me focusing on the detail of that particular flower. Um, Whereas when I'm taking pictures of like people is to capture the entire moment. So I think in some instances more intimate with like landscape,
Mm-hmm.
depending on what it is. But the flower, I think it's just beautiful.
Mm.
I don't know if that
Yeah,
answers the
I asked that
question.
because, yeah, I mean, what comes to mind to me, there are people, I take pictures, but I don't say I'm a photographer, right? So I was wondering, right, like to to be a photographer, right? Um, just thinking about it though, there's this lens that you can capture through, right? And then there's your everyday things that you just walk past and you never capture anything from it, but the
Mm-hmm.
moment, right? But I understand what you're saying about capturing the moment with
Mm-hmm.
people and being with them
Mm-hmm.
in the moment. Um, what this led me up to is talking about spirituality and your spiritual journey. Um, can you talk to us about your spiritual journey? You grew up, how you grew up, and where you are now in terms of spirituality.
Absolutely. So I grew up Catholic. Um, I, when we were young, we would go to church on Sundays.
Mm-hmm.
That stopped after a while. Um, and then when I went to high school, I went to Catholic high school,
Oh,
an all girl Catholic
okay.
school.
Mm,
Um, yeah. And then that's when I kind of revisited what I had learned when I was a child
mm,
and how I guess it was different because when I was a child, I learned like prayer in Spanish and all that stuff. And then when I was in high school, I learned it in English. So it was, to
mm,
me, it was a little not different. It's just I was older, so I was able to kind of interpret it a little different than when I was like a child.
mhm.
Now, as an adult, um, I'm Catholic.
Right,
um,
you're Catholic,
like,
right? I'm
that
still
hasn't
Catholic.
that hasn't changed.
That hasn't
I
changed,
don't.
right? Has
That hasn't
anything
changed.
changed, right? What changed?
Well, that hasn't changed. I'm still, I believe in God. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I don't go to church as often, especially during pandemic, but
Right.
um, I try to go here and there. I know it doesn't sound the best, but I'm being completely honest. I'm very
The best to who though? It's up to you, right? No
right.
judgment, right? I think, yeah,
Uh,
you want to be a good Catholic, right? And so a
right,
good Catholic goes to church. Is that what you're saying?
right.
So
No,
I'm
and this is
not
part
judging
of
you.
no, and this is no, and that's fine. And this is part of the reason. This is part of like what kind of I was able to kind of just think through because what I learned as a child and what I learned when I was older, and I was like, well, like because I don't go, it doesn't mean that I don't believe in God, and that's not the case.
Mhm,
Um, so that's where I'm at.
mhm,
Also very spiritual. I
mhm,
take a lot of time to meditate and to and prayer too.
mhm,
But I think that the biggest thing for me through my journey is through it all. I think it's like the hope and faith, and hope and faith has, in a lot of ways,
mhm,
um, kept me grounded
mhm.
in a lot of different situations.
How do you practice faith?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more
I
time?
said, how do you practice faith?
Your How do I practice faith?
When you say faith, how do you practice faith? I'm just asking the question because I've been thinking about faith a lot and talking about it. And
Hmm.
so when you say faith, what does that mean for
For
you?
me, faith
Mhm.
is believing.
believing
Believing. Um, it's
that
believing.
everything you believing that whatever you want you'll get, or believing what you we believe in. Well, believing. I'm not trying to be funny or anything. I'm just saying. Right? I
No, and
know, like, no,
that's a
I know
valid
faith is like
question.
hope and the evidence of things unseen. You believe
Seen,
that, you know
yes,
what I'm saying? I have
yes.
faith.
Have
Yeah.
faith and believing, because part of faith is believing, and not only like in yourself, but that. And I'm not saying that, oh, it's all of it is, um if I do this, if I do that, but it's it's believing. It's like that strong sense of like, I don't know, how can like, trying to look like, say the word that I'm looking for.
Mhm.
um Having, believing in, like, I don't that's like the best way I can explain it right now. I can't like
Yeah.
give you like an
Yeah.
example, but it's like
I think I
believing,
get it with
like
everything
having
you're
like
saying.
that. Yeah, like, just, yeah, that's the best way I can explain it to you, like, right now. If I come up with the word, I would tell you before our time, because
Do you even
I
remember
run
that?
I want to be like as specific as I can, but that's the first thing that came to mind when I think about it, is like believing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, and I got it. Yeah, believing that everything is going to be all right. Having faith that, when I think about it, I think about, even though it's not happening right now,
Hmm.
believing and having faith and belief go together. They do go together, right?
Yeah,
Knowing. I think about it like
yeah,
that. And faith is a one of those words that people say all the time, right? Even in all the spiritual practices, it's like faith, let's have faith. And so I'm sorry, I just threw it out to you. It's like, so how do you practice
no,
that?
it's
Like,
okay.
but you
It's
answered it.
okay. No, it's fine.
You said believing, right? And
No,
that was a good answer, but it was cute. You say believing, and then you thought there was more, right?
I have it as like my bat, like my phone, like in my phone, like I have believe, like my
Believe, right.
I guess my wallpaper on my phone
Right.
says
For me too, when I think about it, I always talk about I think about your thoughts are very powerful, right? And so my whole practice is around the thoughts that you keep, right? And so if
believe.
we connect the two, I try to connect them to is for me it's like you say a concept, but how do you really do it? The how to of all that, right, is
Hmm.
important, I think, to people, right? So
Right.
we say, and I use the law of attraction as my way of thinking about and relating to the world and relating to life. And I use the thoughts that you keep, right,
Hmm.
as my way, of practicing. One
Yeah.
of the biggest things for me, even in terms of if with meditation is about clearing the thoughts and then
Yeah.
having clarity when you come
Yeah.
back, right?
Yeah.
I think about, and we do it all the time. You notice if you're really happy, you attract happy people. If
That's
you're
true.
really sad, you're going to attract sad people because you're going to attract the energy that you put out will be the energy that you will get back from people.
Hmm.
So for me, the practice of watching your thoughts and energy
Yeah.
is really important in all of the practices.
Yes, it is. And your
Yeah.
vision.
And your vision,
Yeah.
yeah. Talk about what's your vision?
My vision.
Hmm.
Oh, I big one, but I like to also press it. Like I love doing vision boards too.
Hmm. Hmm.
Just visualize
Hmm.
like at a greater, like bigger.
Hmm.
Um, I think that's another way to. Um, it's a little different, but I think that's a way to.
Visualization. What comes to mind? You said vision. I was like, "What's your vision?" Right? She's like, "Anetta, what?" I thought about it from the point of view of visualization as a practice, right? How we get
Mhm.
to decide, what just say I want to move to a tropical place, right? So I get to visualize what that might look like. And in that visualization, then it becomes true. And I've just seen this happen because I know that there was once a dress I cut out of a magazine because I thought it was the most beautiful dress I'd seen,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And I just put it up on my desk because it was just pretty. And then one day I walked down the street in the store and it was in the window. It came right to me. What were the odds of that dress that I picked out of that magazine that I thought was the
Yeah.
prettiest dress that I looked at would just show up down the street, the exact dress, right? So I visualized that dress. So it's just thinking about how things come to us, right? And how life is for us,
Yeah.
right? What
Yeah.
I think about what practices, how can we support ourselves? And my goal is supporting people and living your best life, right? And I like to bring the joy and the grace and the ease without the struggle, right?
Yeah.
There's the rigor, there's all that could be there, but it could be joyful, right? We
Yeah.
could have
It
fun
can
while
be.
we're doing it. And
Yeah.
so really finding that joy is a part of what I promote, and I want people to laugh and be happy and still get things done.
Yes. Yes, you
um,
do.
that's my whole thing, right?
You do. You create
Yeah.
this space.
Yeah, and that's what it, and that's why one of the things when I think about conversations with Reverend G, it's really about what I first thought about it. It's about having a space to have really authentic spiritual conversations, right? To be able
Mhm.
to come together and talk about religion and spirituality and how we relate to it and how it supports us in our lives. Like for me, I think that having a spiritual base was the best thing for me because I grew up Christian. I went to church as a kid. Now, some of the stuff, right now, I still kind of question and I look at it and I'm like, yeah, but I have the base and I understand that the
Mhm.
base has supported me. Like just having that baseline spiritual practices or beliefs. I think it does come
Mhm.
down to what we believe, you know,
Yeah.
and starting there. Um, so what kind of goals do you have going forward in terms of um supporting? I would say we're in a time now where how we show up and the things that we work on and how we inspire others is really important.
Mhm.
We've just gone through this whole phase where now there's a lot of emphasis on Black and brown people, how we're being treated, right? What jobs we've been given.
Mhm.
So, where do you see yourself in, and what role do you see yourself playing in all that, in the empowerment of women or in that whole role right now?
Well, I have a few things.
Okay, good.
Um, so I'm very big on empowering women. I grew up in a single parent household. Um, I was raised by four women.
Mm.
So that's very important to me.
Mhm.
Um, of course, yes, I had male figures, my uncles and stuff like that, and and my father as well. But mainly it was um, these four women in my life, right? So women empowerment is extremely important to me. I think that one of the ways that I've created that or will continue to create that space is by um, writing.
Mm.
I don't know at this time how to how I will of course by writing more books and stuff like that, but in terms of like something more short term or something not short term but doesn't necessarily take like a year or whatever to write a book, creating a space, I haven't figured that out yet.
Mhm.
I know I can use my voice um, to be, you know, the voice for others who
Mhm.
may not, you know, who may not speak up or say anything. Um, and that is not only for women, just like people in general, or when not. Sometimes it's how can I say this?
Mm.
Sometimes is I was just thinking of a particular moment
Mhm.
actually last week, but I can't really share specifics.
Go ahead. Mhm.
Um, you know, it was something as you know as simple. And I'll give a brief. It was something as simple as just saying, "Can we please stop so that we can tell the new person what we're talking about?" Like I think it's like also being present and very mindful of who's around us,
Mhm.
um, and making them feel welcomed and comfortable so they can open up and you know share their experiences as well. So that's also part of it.
Mhm.
Um, I also think that it's important to also be able to collaborate with others. Um, it's not always to just be, oh, only what I'm doing, but also what can we do?
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Like, we're collaborating today.
Mhm.
Um, so that's just an example. I think there's power in numbers.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and I think that's also important because a lot of the times that, you know, sometimes we grow up and this is my own experience, you know, growing up, it's like you don't touch strangers. You go home and you go to school. You don't say
Mhm.
hello. You
Mhm.
just go home. So,
Mhm.
and that's kind of ingrained in us as a young, you know, being so young. And it's just kind of like because you know, I grew up
Mhm.
in New York and stuff like that. And I get it now as an adult.
Mhm.
But at the same time, um, it's also about creating that community and that safety net so people can be like, okay, oh, I know so and so does this.
Mhm.
You know, that's not my expertise, but so and so knows how to do so. So I
Mhm.
think that's really important too.
Mhm. Creating connections and being more collaborative as
Hmm.
opposed to just doing it on your own.
Yeah.
But being able to even find those communities, that's what I loved about the Momentum community because it is a community
Yes.
that you can always go to and you can always find great people right in the
Right.
community, right? And we all look for community. That's one of the
Yes.
things that we're looking for, a space where we feel that we belong. We want to
Hmm.
belong. So we're always looking for community and a sense of belonging somewhere. And and I think within community is where we do a lot of the collaboration, where we do a lot of the sharing and partnering. And I think that more and more we're seeing women collaborating together and partnering together. And And I'm like in the move towards the entrepreneurship and being able to support each other in our own goals, right? Supporting each other in starting businesses that are becoming successful with us
Mhm.
supporting each other. So that's what I'd like to see happening also. Um,
I think the empowerment is the elevating of one another
mhm,
is truly important. Not
yes,
only the empowerment, but also like elevating, like just because you know we all have different expertise in different areas. So yeah.
right. Um, yeah, I like that part. Elevating. I was in your writing, and I know, and I'm just talking about right now in this moment because I'm sure that it's evolved over time, right? The things you wrote about at 11 and the things you write about now are very different, right? The progression between, going from that.
Yeah.
What would you say today in your writing? What messages are you giving? What would be the message that you will want to give through your writing?
Oh, a big one.
Mm-hmm.
This is a big one. Believe in yourself,
Mm, mm,
even if they tell you that it's not possible.
mm,
Um, don't don't lose your focus.
mm,
And this is by me thinking back to, it's funny you asked me that question because I actually was rereading my journals from when I was younger
mm,
recently. Um, Actually like 2 weeks ago.
mm,
And I was reading a certain notebooks, and those were like thing like I didn't, like at the time I didn't understand, but now
mm,
looking back at it, I'm like,
mm,
I'm so glad I didn't listen to that. I'm so glad that I believed in myself. I'm so glad that I chose to do something different, that I decided to go away for school,
mm,
or that I didn't stay in the city.
mm,
So little things like that. And a lot of
mm,
people were like, "Oh, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't
mm,
go there. That's so
mm,
far." Um, but I still did it,
mm,
and that's made all the difference.
mm,
Or when, um, you know, when I had a goal in mind, and like,
mhm,
"Oh, you can't do that."
mm, mhm.
Yes, I can.
Right, right.
And
Yeah.
just kind of rereading through those, and they're kind of fresh in my mind right now. Till now, those are the things that I would tell anyone, and I would tell my younger self.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm,
and another one is because just because I didn't have like excess of funds at the time, that certain things wouldn't be available to me.
mhm,
There were other ways that I was able to do the things that I was able to
mm,
achieve.
mhm, mhm.
So I think that's a big takeaway, just
Right, like
because,
perseverance. Keep doing it.
yeah,
Go for it. Don't let
resilience.
all the considerations get in your way. You know what came to my mind earlier? You said that you were raised by four women, right?
Hmm.
Um, can you talk about the impact of being in a house with four women? Was there something memorable from that, or something you could share about being raised with just four women?
So, after my parents, well, they separated first. So after they separated,
Mhm.
um, my I didn't, we didn't live together. Like it was my two grandmothers, my aunt
Mm.
and my mom. We didn't live in the same household. However, I was raised by all of them
Oh.
differently.
Mm.
Um, but they all taught me two very important things.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them is respect.
Mm-hmm.
So even, because I'm not gonna sugarcoat. Like, as I was growing up, I wasn't always like the most like obedient child.
Right, 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 right.
So, I was gonna do like whatever I wanted to. I wanted the extra candy.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not here nor there. But I think that being raised by them, when I went to my grandmother's house, or I spent time with my aunt or being with my mom, they taught me different things, right? They taught me to, different stuff. But I think the biggest one was respect.
Mm-hmm.
And also, um, even though I didn't get it by them, I didn't get that then. It was out of love.
Mm-hmm.
So what I thought that was a punishment,
Mm-hmm.
it was out of love. And that impact was different, um, for me and my experience, and even like some of my cousins who were raised with their mom and dad. It was different because I got advice from women. So their experiences, and of course, they didn't tell me their life experiences when I was like
Right.
7 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I think because of their life experiences, their advice was much more profound. If that makes sense. I'm not downgrading fathers, but it was just like more. It was like the advice was profound.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
Good.
and just the strength too, um, of just like generational strength. I
Yeah,
think
that's what I was
was
thinking
very.
about.
It
Generations of
was
women.
just, yeah, it was generational of like strength. I just, and now that I know more of the story of like my grandmothers and my aunt and my
Mm-hmm.
mom,
Mm-hmm.
and then here I am. I kind of look back to that and I'm like, wow, that's what that meant.
Right. And take all that in and make your impact in the world.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's pretty cool. I was going to talk about, but I guess we don't. We could go into that a little bit. Talking about being raised by 4 women and the impact how men are in your world, right? The impact of being raised by 4 women and how you deal with men.
Hmm.
Um, how does that show up for you?
Well, I'll tell you this little secret.
What's
I
the little
am
tip?
No, I am actually the only girl. So I only have brothers. So that was
Wow!
very interesting how that
Wow!
worked out in my life. Yeah. Yeah. How that worked out in my life. Here I am being raised by, women, but then my siblings are all male.
Wow!
And
That is interesting.
yeah, and for a short amount of time, like even my stepbrothers, I had like it was all boys, no girls, always boys. Um, and at the time I was the eldest, well, except for a few, but I was like the eldest, so
Hmm.
it was like they would like say, "Oh, you can't do certain things," and I'm gonna use this example because it's very like it's something I don't forget. It's like we were we were like at a park or something. It was me, my brothers, and like my stepbrothers at the time. And we're at a park and they're climbing up a tree. And of course, they were climbing up the tree. I wanted to do it too.
Right.
Um, and they were like, "Oh, you can't do that." Blah 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 blah. Anyway, long story short, I was able to climb up the tree, and I was wearing a dress and all that and all that.
Mhm.
But I think it's interesting because even though I was raised mostly by women, I think because I have my siblings are all boys,
Mm.
I think it kind of balanced out.
Yeah, okay. Right, right. That is a secret, right? Because I was raised by all women, right? And I'm thinking, well, I wonder what the male impact was in your life, right? And how that, plays out now. That was kind of like, do you understand how that plays out now and what that looks like for you now? But you have
Yeah.
boys all around. There were siblings and not really role models, right? Or male.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I did I did speak to my dad, and I had my uncle who was a very strong figure in my life.
Mhm.
Um but because I didn't necessarily like I well, yeah, my uncle kind of raised me too. Um and he is a very important person in my life. Um I think that it really I don't want to say change, but I guess it's different. It's something that you even asking me that right now, it's just like I'm trying to like think like, oh my goodness, like sit here and like how it has really like shaped me, because I'm used to having a lot of women around me and then my brothers,
Mm.
which is like it kind of like evened out in a way. But in terms of like role models, I've had male role models in my life. But I think the biggest impact has been the four women in my life.
Mhm,
So,
mhm.
and I'm not saying that my dad or my uncle are not great men.
Right,
It's
right.
just
But it's the things
that's
you remember and the
yeah,
highlights. We'll call it the highlights, not to
yeah,
take away from
no,
your dad or your uncle, but to
no,
say these women were influential in my life. These four
yeah,
women were the women that like you actually model after, that they told you so many
mhm,
things, right? Until you can get to a point where you can figure it out on your own. You're
yeah,
going on what they told you, right?
yeah,
So, and at such a young age, you still have a lot of growing and developing, right, to do in terms of figuring out who you are. We get so much, and then we have to then say, well, what do I believe, and who am I, and how does this relate to me? Yeah, so we are running out of time.
that was so quick.
Yeah, but so I'd like to give you a moment, to tell people how to get your book and leave us with a message, however you want to end.
However, I would like to.
However you would like.
Okay. All right. So you can get my book through my website. It's on
Mhm.
my Instagram on I am Lobel.
Okay.
I actually just changed it because I put the link to this tonight, but I'll put it
Hmm.
back up and
Okay, cool.
once I'm done.
Hmm.
And I think I'm gonna. I don't think I know. I'm gonna
Hmm.
read you guys a poem.
Okay, great.
Let me see. I wasn't expecting to do so, but
Hmm. That's perfect.
um, actually, I'll read you the. I'm gonna read you. I'll read everyone the English version of. I wrote a book. I wrote a poem of the four women of my life. So
Mm.
let me just grab it real quick. Sorry for the delay. I don't want to go over. Oh, here it is. It's called Like Them.
Mm.
I was born mujer, just like them, although in other times, in the modern times of the 21st century, where I dress without restrictions, marry at my preferred age, and love whom I choose without considering their sex or gender. She was born in the 20s, the most flirtatious, loving, and strict of all. All in one, she dressed with long skirts, sometimes with a belt around her waist, and curves like a bassoon, green eyes like a river when reflected by a waterfall, reddish lips like cherry, straight black like wool. Her name of French origin, meaning saint, and that was my paternal grandmother. The other was born in the 30s, docile, loving, and tender, working two jobs, dressed in her uniform, and the other tucked in her handbag, curly hair in a ponytail, her pink lipstick, light lipstick because she worked in a warehouse, brown eyes like a tree trunk, with a sense of humor, named like the Virgin Mary. That's my maternal grandmother.
Mm.
My aunt was born in the 60s from my paternal grandmother, strict, strong, sensitive, hard worker, a woman with goals of improvement, hair neither short nor long, dressed in high bows that looked like skyscrapers from back in the 90s.
Mm.
Long nails like a heron with pink nail polish, heels that elevated her to the ceiling, brown eyes with green accents like precious jewels, an Arabic name meaning happiness.
Mm.
This is my paternal aunt.
Mm.
My mother, also born in the 60s, strong, resilient, flirtatious, and strict. She fell in love with a man who was visiting her country. My mother worked in a store, slim woman. She married my father and immigrated to the United States with a green card along with two children, my brother and I. Sometime, sometime later, my youngest brother was of the three was born. A betrayal changed everything, and that is her story, named after roses. All roses are beautiful, but all have thorns. The thorns which were a weapon of resistance because of her love. Her love for the other wasn't enough. That's my mother. I was
Mm.
born in the 80s, the granddaughter of her and the other, the niece of the paternal aunt, the daughter of the woman who left everything to live in the United States. My story is more or less the same, although not the same. It got better with time. They named me with a different name but similar to that of my paternal grandmother. My grandma's princess, my grandmother's first granddaughter, the belle of my paternal aunt, and my mother's only daughter. These are borrowed stories from the women in my life being here in the United States. They were not from here, but over there. They came before me so that I could experience better, become better. Je t'adore toujours, they would tell me when I was a teenager. At the time, I did not understand why. I only received the words. That still bring me memories of those times when we lived in that one room, one bedroom apartment, all in one.
Mm.
In those moments, I understood the sacrifices that had been made for me. Their stories I had to share with them because of how they raised me in four different ways. But those four women always instilled in me the most important values: respect and love. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for joining me on Conversations with Reverend G. And I'll be in touch with you.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
sharing. All
You're
right.
welcome, and thank you for having me. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you for joining me tonight on Conversations with Reverend G. And I'll see you again next week right here on WEMS Radio from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. And remember, you can find me every day on Facebook as Reverend Grenetta Mason and on Instagram as Rev Grenetta. Have a great, great week.